This series of author interviews is brought to you by Leisure Press and the Book Reality Experience, turning writers' dreams into book realities.
Hi everybody and welcome to another Book Realities, our series of interviews with independent authors. And today we're joined by a special guest. Now, she is the author of Crowns and Legends. She was also the author of a particularly viral tweet last December, but we'll get to all of that. For now, welcome Chelsea Banning to Book Realities. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Congratulations on your success, even if it was a surprise, but as I say, we'll get onto that at the end. For now, for those that don't know Chelsea Banning, who are you and where are you talking to us from and what do you get up to?
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I am a full-time author now. I was a former librarian, and I'm coming from Warren, Ohio, which is in Northeast Ohio, United States.
And you're 12 hours fully behind Australia, so as my day is dawning, your evening is coming in, yeah?
Yep, exactly 12 hours between us.
Brilliant stuff. So we'll get on to Of Crowns and Legends as well, which is an Arthurian fantasy legend based on the Arthurian tradition, but with a few major plot twists that some might not be familiar with. But let's start at the beginning. When did Chelsea decide that Chelsea was going to be a writer?
It started in high school. I was about 15, I think. I was in 11th grade, which is the year before we graduate. And my English program that year, my English teacher, we were doing like early British lit, and we had to read Le Morte d'Arthur. And she teamed up with the other 11th grade English teacher, and they made this really cool like project to go along with it. So we had to read it, but then instead of like writing an essay or having like a test on it or something, we had our pick of different projects. We could make a magazine, like a gossip magazine, and have like all of like the points and like, oh no, Lancelot and Guinevere spotted kissing, kind of stuff like that. We could film like scenes from it, or we could like write a little fairy tale. I decided to write a fairy tale, and I found I really liked that. And I discovered what was called flash fiction. And for those that don't know, flash fiction is short stories that are maybe a page or two long. And I started writing flash fictions, and then I got kind of, I guess, a spark of an idea about original characters happening within the Arthurian legends, and it just kind of went from there.
That's fantastic. So that was the first story that you started working on, ultimately led to your first novel.
Yep. Yeah, I've been working on it off and on for about 15, 16 years.
Wow. And obviously you said that you became a librarian, so you went to college and decided to follow a librarian career pathway, or was it just simply you thought, I love of books, you can get paid while you read?
I did not go to college for library science. I initially started as an education major. I wanted to be a teacher. The more I got through that, the more I was like, I don't think I want to deal with this. And then I was having trouble passing what's called the praxis test. And it was this test you had to pass before you could get to your upper level classes in education. I couldn't pass the math portion. I tried like 3 times. And by that point, I couldn't spend $80 per test. So I ended up switching to just straight English because I was taking English classes. So I declared an education major with a specialty, I guess, in English, because I wanted to teach literature. So I already had all these English classes under my belt, so switching wasn't a big deal. And then, so I graduated with just a BA in English without any clue of what to do. So I just kind of floated around for a while. I worked at a really cool historical auditorium that did all kinds of like big events. Like we had, we had really big names like ZZ Top and Celtic Woman and like all kinds of big names. But of course, the pandemic happened, and then I saw a listing for a local library, and I applied there, and I was the teen librarian there for about an hour and a half, a year and a half. And but then with what happened with the tweet and stuff, I decided to become a full-time author.
Brilliant. I love your modesty, by the way. I only graduated with a BA in English. That's a very modest statement. I also love your pick of the two bands that you went for to illustrate how big that place was: ZZ Top and Celtic Women.
Yeah, I mean, we had big names.
Yeah, but that's I mean, if you'd said ZZ Top and I don't know Led Zeppelin, I'd have thought, okay, but Celtic Women and ZZ Top, I mean, that would be a playbill I'd pay to see. I also noticed as you were adjusting your headphones earlier, did I notice a Claddagh ring on your finger?
Oh, yes. Yep, my wedding ring is a Claddagh ring. It's my second wedding ring. My first one we got matching tungsten rings engraved with quotes from Game of Thrones.
Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I've got my Claddagh ring, and then I've got a Celtic dragon, double dragon ring that my husband got for me for my book. And then I've got the Celtic triquetra. And
so is there an Irish connection with the fada, or did you just like it?
I just liked it. I do like Ireland. I've always wanted to visit. And I really love the folklore and the fairies. So I thought when I was little, I thought I had family that came from Ireland, but it turns out I was wrong.
That's quite all right. Well, obviously, as a completely biased person, if you ever do touch down in God's own country, you obviously have to go up to the northeast, the coast road from my hometown of Larne all the way up to the Giant's Causeway, which is full of the Nine Glens, and we've got all sorts of fairy and folklore, and of course it's also where Game of Thrones was predominantly filmed. So there's all sorts of bucket list tick lists that you can do there.
Oh yeah, I want to go so bad and visit. I'd love to move there, but my husband doesn't want it.
But it is a long commute depending on what he's doing. So let's talk about Of Crowns and Legends then. So for people that will obviously know the Arthurian legend, King Arthur, based on probably not real, probably folklore, manages to limp through to around about the 11th, 12th century when a British guy gets hold of it and adds all this superfluous stuff to it. But you've taken, so everybody knows, most people know rather, Arthur, Guinevere betrays him with Lancelot, there's all sorts of things, and he lives in Camelot. But you've taken it from when Arthur is dead, and he's now got these two kids which don't appear anywhere else in the folklore. He's got Alwyn and Ariadne. And then what, without giving the spoiler away at the end?
So it takes place about 20 years after Arthur has died, and Guinevere has been ruling as regent until Anwell is of age to take the crown himself. And it is a story that follows Anwell and Ariadne. And of course, it's a fantasy story, so there's an upcoming war and there's a villain that they have to defeat. But it's mostly their journey of coming to adulthood and dealing with a very sheltered childhood and learning to live under their father's shadow. He's passed away, so he's kind of become like a legend himself, a legend, like almost like a godlike figure to the people of Camelot, and how do they live up to that? So a lot of it is their journey of dealing with, this trauma. And of course, you have magical villains and fays coming into play, and different countries. Old enemies might return.
And at the end, it's certainly not a happy ever after ending, because this is set up beautifully in the last chapter. And we'll not say how or why, but it's really set up with one of those dun 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 moments that leads obviously into book 2 and book 3 and book 4 and book 5. How many books are we going to see?
3. This will be a 3-book series.
Fantastic. So it was going well. You had a fantastic artist. You are writing as an independent author, a properly, what I consider a properly professionally published independent author. So you've paid for editing. You have got graphic design. You have got formatting. It's all done. You've got a most amazing cover, which I will put up at some point over there, probably.
Thank you.
There or somewhere. And you decide to have a book reading or a book launch in your local bookstore.
Yeah, so there's this bookstore in my husband's hometown I always think of it as kind of like Narnia a little bit. It's like this little magical, whimsical shop, and they have all kinds of like antique books, lots of like first editions. And I saw that they had done another author signing there, and I sold my book at a local Comic-Con. So it was kind of different. I had like a vendor table, but I didn't have like a author signing technically. And so I reached out to Joe, he's the owner, with his wife Sarah, for Pretty Good Books. And I was like, hey, I saw you did this. Would you be up to hosting another local author? And they were like, yeah, come on out. And so I did. And my friends, I had 2 friends show up and a couple people wander in. My friends Mark and Gabby came, and a couple loyal patrons to the bookstore came. But I had thought more people would come out, but
now we should give a plug. So it's nothing to do with the bookstore. This is, and we'll get into why these things happen, but this is a bookstore. It's called
Pretty Good Books.
Pretty Good Books, and it is in
it's in Ashtabula, Ohio. So it's about an hour north of me, and it's my husband's hometown.
Right. So a huge shout out to a local bookstore that's going to give an independent author even a chance of doing a signing.
Yes.
I have to say that I have been to a signing where I didn't know how many books to take, and I was told, oh, well, you're going to be plugged on to the end of this festival, and it's probably going to be huge. And so I ordered, for my first ever book appearance, I ordered 200 books, and I brought 196 of them home. And I was so depressed. And then the next one, because it had a library backing it, I was hugely fortunate. So I walked in, the library had mass email lists, etc., and 35 people turned up. Hooray!
Nice.
But that's not actually what happened to you, because your next book signing, and we'll get to what happened in the middle, your next book signing happened when and where?
So immediately after the first one, I was still working at the library at that time, and we set up a book signing there. And where I worked at the library was closer to my hometown. So like my local news stations and papers came out, and a lot of like friends from high school came, and people I knew that I'd grown up with around the area and stuff. So they all came. So that was a really big success. There was about 75 people there, which was about our max capacity. It was a small library that I worked at. And then we made a big one at Pretty Good Books, and we gave ourselves a little bit of time to get everything set up. So we had that one at the end of January of this year.
And how many people turned up at that, would you guess?
300 or so, 300 plus. There was a line down the road. So it's on Main Street in Ashtabula. So there was all of Maine is just local businesses and stuff, and they were just down the road. But we'd also had, oh gosh, I can't even remember how many other authors, a long list of authors that had came out. I invited a ton of local authors and some of my other indie author friends, and everybody had an amazing selling day. Like, people came out in droves to support everyone, not just me, but everyone who came. And it was amazing.
Huge congratulations on that. And now we'll get to how did we go from 2 to 300 plus. So in December, I saw a tweet, but it wasn't from you, to be fair. I saw a tweet from a guy who most people who, if they're into fantasy, would know, was a guy called Neil Gaiman. Because you had tweeted, and we'll put the tweets up as well, but you had tweeted, "Oh, I've had a book signing and 2 people turned up." To which Neil Gaiman replied to you and said what? Do you remember?
He said I did better than a signing for him and Terry Pratchett where nobody's showed up.
Yeah. So Terry Pratchett, who we should all, we should all do that when we mention Terry Pratchett's name.
Right.
So Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett had a signing. I think he said it was in New York, although I'll put the tweet up.
I think so.
For Good Omens, and nobody turned up. And of course, as soon as Neil said it, then you kind of got a bit of a rolling ball. Who else was pitching in there?
When I checked on Sunday, a few hours after I sent the tweet out, I was seeing names like Robin Hobb, Min Jin Lee, Rebecca Mackay, and I saw Margaret Atwood, and then there was Sean Cassidy. Sean Cassidy replied, and Henry Winkler replied. And I think it was like Henry Winkler that kind of sent it off outside of the book world. So that kind of, and then my favorite one, even though I love all these authors, was Flavor Flav. So, so that was a fun reply. But yeah, there was so many, and Stephen King replied, and he plugged the bookstore event in January, which is why we got a ton of people coming. And that was amazing just to see these big authors still support the smaller authors.
I loved Stephen King's tweet. I think Stephen King's was he'd done his signing in Salem, and one kid turned up and asked him where he could get books on a certain subject, and King just it was superb. The other thing about that was that was the visible that you saw on Twitter. You went from, I don't know how many followers you had previously. You've now got 250,000, give or take.
Oh no, I probably had a couple hundred. Most of them were probably bots. Now I have about 14.6 thousand.
Oh, I thought it was. Oh, maybe it was the viewing figures on one of the tweets I saw had been seen.
Oh, yeah, probably, yeah.
Had been seen by heaps and heaps. Mind you, 14,500 Twitter followers is no mean feat. What I loved about it was in the background, invisible to you, was people coming to me going, "Have you seen?" Which must have happened to lots of independent authors around the world. People coming to us knowing that we were also independent authors going, "Oh my gosh, have you seen what's happening here?" And we were all going, "Yes, we have." And we're hugely pleased for it. We love it. Because there's that horrible, I am not envious. I am not envious. I am completely supportive and very happy. And we are very, very happy. Yeah. Because if it can happen that one independent author makes their break and breaks another little barrier down for traditional guardians, it's hugely important.
Yes, it is. Yeah, definitely. I know I've gotten a lot of followers who aren't really like in the book community. I got a lot of followers that just kind of like were fans of like Stephen King's movies or something, and they were like, I didn't realize that there was this different kind of publishing. And so a lot of people learned that independent authors existed, and that, you know, we were kind of like struggling against traditional published authors to get into bookstores. And so there's been a lot of learning and eye-opening to independent authors, which has been, I think, really, really cool.
It is cool. We're getting there. I'm guessing we've been going as a movement, not that we're that type of movement, but probably about 10 years now, give or take. People would say maybe a little bit earlier. Amazon KDP was the changing, but and I know YouTube helped a lot, especially before like TikTok and stuff, because that's where I got all of my information. I followed other indie authors who published, and I watched their videos about, you know, this is how you publish on KDP. There's this other platform. This is what they do. And then I know TikTok has been really, really helpful for indie authors as well. Like I know a lot of like the popular
Spicy Book Talk books are actually indie published books, but they're in like Barnes and Noble or Books a Million, like those big chain stores that usually are kind of like, no, we just get traditionally published books. So a lot of that, like, it helps, like, even though it's like, it's romance, which is like, I think it makes the most money out of anything in the book world. There's still indie books, and that's amazing.
We've had huge success with, especially our American authors in Barnes and Noble.
Mm-hmm.
Barnes and Noble's been very, very happy to accommodate independent authors in as book signings. So we've got Wanda Penalver Belvin, one of our poets. She's doing a book signing on the 22nd of April in Barnes and Noble in Finland, etc. I should say, by the way, I stumbled through how to produce my first 3 books, and then having figured it out, I ran a training company. So I thought, I shall run a training course and teach other people how to do it. And at the end of the training, people came up and said, I don't want to do it. Can you do it for me? And that's how that's how Book Reality was born.
Yeah.
So,
and because it's overwhelming and hard. And I had owned a small business before, and I think if I didn't, I don't think I would have went the indie publishing route, because it can be, overwhelming, and there's a lot to it and a lot to kind of understand. So I know a lot of people they're just like, no, I can't. It's too much.
Yeah, well, we thought that we might help 1 or 2 or 3 people, and that was 6 years ago, and now we've helped 75, 80 authors, 110 books.
That's amazing.
California to Queensland. It's all to do with independent authors being really out there supporting each other.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that's one of the things I loved about my tweet going viral is people saw how supportive writers are with each other and how supportive that writing community is.
It does open the doors to places that I never thought. For example, we can now do, obviously we always could, but we can now break into the audiobook markets, etc. Here's a fun fact you'll like. I managed to get my crime novels narrated by Gemma Whelan, who was Yara Greyjoy on Game of Thrones.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
I know it was.
It was
very, it was one of those pinch me moments. It's like, oh my goodness, Gemma Whelan said she'll do my book. That's great.
Oh my God, that is so cool.
It was very cool. Right, so let's go back to Chelsea as the writer then. I was going to say, how do you write? Well, but do you have laptop? Do you handwrite? Do you have to be in a specific room at a time of the day? Or do you fit it in when you're at cafes? How does Chelsea Banning actually go about writing?
So I used to write longhand in notebooks and stuff, and I wish I could still do that, but I have since injured my wrist being on a computer too much. I've got tendinitis, so I can't hold a pencil for too long anymore, and I've got like all kinds of ergonomic setups. I have to have a vertical mouse and stuff. So I do write on a laptop. I have my laptop at eye level, and I've got a keyboard. When I was working, I would write on like my breaks, and I would like fit in writing time anywhere I could. I have an office here at my new house. We moved in 2020, so I have an office here, and that's where I do most of my writing. Sometimes I move around the house if I need like a little bit different. Sometimes I'll handwrite scenes out if I feel like I really need to work something out. I do tend to outline by hand first, because it's a lot less writing than writing out full scenes. And I have various notebooks, research notes, and ideas that pop into my head that I don't want to forget for later. Sometimes I go out to cafes. They have to be quiet cafes, though. I can't work at like those really fun, boisterous cafes. I love them. Can't work there. But I usually have to have headphones on.
When you're working at home, do you have music on in the background, or do you get up at 6 a.m. and religiously work now until 6 p.m. or?
So I do get up early because the kid has to go to school. But I tend to write later in the day. I like to get a lot of my housework done first, or else I'll just be like too distracted. I do listen to a lot of like fantasy music. But mostly I actually write to like ambient sounds. So if I'm writing a medieval feast, I'll find medieval feast ambiance videos. So you can hear like a lute in the background or something, a fire going, people eating, silverware clacking. Just the other day, I was writing a scene where that takes place in busy palace corridors. So I found this ambiance of palace corridors, and every once in a while you can hear like guards and their chainmail swishing, and you can hear like giggling or something. Like you can hear like female voices, male voices, you can hear footsteps and stuff like that, or like just like an ambient sound of people passing through the corridors. I find that really helps, especially because I'm not very good at description. So having those kind of ambient sounds so I can hear them in my head really helps with like description and writing in the character senses, what they hear, what they see, what they might smell.
Very good.
That was long-winded.
No, I think that's a brilliant, and I've never heard of people writing to that ambient sound. And you're right, it's I mean, you can describe walking down a corridor, but if you're writing walking down a corridor, you have to bring in the five senses so that the people know what they can hear and see and feel. And
I'm the type of person who doesn't really see stuff in their head when they read. I see like fuzzy, very vaguely detailed stuff in my head. Like I've never seen like a character's face. They're almost like those faceless mannequins to me. So having those ambient sounds, like I can hear the guard, like I can, like the one with the palace corridors, you could hear the guards marching and you can hear their chainmail swishing and like some clanging of their weapons. And then I can picture that kind of in my head a little bit. And so then it helps kind of wake my brain up. And then I can say,
yeah.
Very and good. That helps with, because I can't see it, but I can hear it, so I can describe it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because we've all got, everybody's got a stronger sense that they require. And that's a great prompt for making sure that you do fill in the tapestry of the detail. So with regards to...
write...
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, when I write first drafts, they all have white room syndrome. Like, I never describe anything. So having that ambiance kind of keeps me from white room syndrome all the time.
Very good. I was going to say about those, you mentioned scenes and that first draft, which is, a blank piece of paper in a white room. Do you have the whole book plotted out? Are you a very outlined, plotted, thematic all the way through? You know what's happening in book 2 and book 3?
I tried to be. When I first started this book, I didn't outline or anything. I kind of didn't really know how to go about writing a novel. I didn't really know much about like creative writing. Even in college, because I studied like books instead of like writing. I took a couple creative writing classes, but they were like short form writing and stuff. And I could never get past like the first like 5 chapters. So I was like, whoa, so I should try to outline so I know where it's going, so I'm not changing stuff. And I did make a detailed outline for book 1, but I'm learning for book 2, even after I made a fully detailed outline, that it hinders me a little bit. So I know the major plot points of book 2, but I'm just kind of free writing to get there, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of a mix between a plotter and a pantser.
It makes perfect sense. Some of the most successful writers that I've listened to at festivals and fairs have said that they sit down with a blank piece of paper and a single idea and they just let it flow.
I'm finding that works best for me.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Lee Child, I think it was, that said he just writes with that idea. I'm obviously envious of those people that are master plotters, because they can do stuff that I can't, where they think, it's all outlined. However, so when you're not writing, then what do you get up to?
I read a lot. We have a monthly D&D session with some friends. I love going to Comic-Cons. My husband and I work at Ren fairs. He jousts. And we've both worked like street cast. I've worked a clothing booth. We've both worked the joust. I've done squiring and like emceeing the joust before. So I visit Ren fairs all the time. We go camping in the summer. So
very cool. So when you say Comic-Con, have you been invited to attend a Comic-Con Will that be
I
coming up
have. I've
soon?
been invited to, in a couple weeks, I'll be going to the Grand Rapids Comic-Con in Michigan. And then I have another Comic-Con that I will be going to in September that's a little closer to home that I'm not allowed to say yet.
Very good.
I'm sorry, my home Comic-Con is the Great Lakes Geek Fest. And I think we're working on being a guest there or something, or helping them out. I don't know yet. But
Very
I know
good.
I'm friends with the guys who run it. So
It's an interesting thing that you say there. When you're, I was invited, I was lucky, very lucky, that I knew someone that ran a festival, and I was invited to speak at the festival as an author.
Yeah.
And then he knew someone who ran another festival, and I got invited.
Mm-hmm.
But when those organizers changed, trying to get into festivals was that traditional door again. It was, you bang your head against it. So I've decided on September the 14th next year, so 2024, we're going to host what I hope will be the inaugural independent author book festival in the UK. That's
awesome. That would be so cool. I know there's a ton of author fests and book fests in the States. I don't know of any like indie author specifically.
No,
I don't think
so this
any.
will be completely independent author driven. So there'll be a reading side,
cool.
so there'll be a stream for readers to come along and listen to their independent author favorites, but there'll also be an independent author writer stream so that indies that want to learn how to do it can come along. So we'll talk later about perhaps getting you across to the UK for that. That might be fun.
Yeah.
But we're starting it off with a series of book fairs. So we're going to run one in Western Australia, because that's where we're based, and we're going to run one in Cambridgeshire in the UK on the 30th of April. That's going to be the first one, because of what you were just saying, that when you try and get through that door, unless you know someone on the other side or you're lucky.
Right.
So we're going to try and change the landscape a bit. So that should be fun.
Yeah. It's all about, you got to know people. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about on my panel at Grand Rapids is networking and getting to know people. I've met so many cool people at Ren fairs that do so many cool things. And it's just, you just got to get out there, especially as indie authors. I feel like word of mouth, you got to get that word of mouth. Like we can throw our stuff at TikTok and Facebook and stuff as much as we want. But I really think with indie authors, you got to really get out there and get to know people, because like you said, we both knew someone who ran a con, and then they knew someone, and then they knew someone. So, and it's a lot easier when you know people, unfortunately. Would
that be your number one tip for the independent author who's thinking of starting out?
Yeah, is make connections, definitely. You can make connections online, and and also, but you have to be careful, because you don't want to make connections just to get you don't want to feel dishonest about making those connections, if that makes sense. Like if people think, oh, they're just talking to me because they want me to buy something, like that's not great. You got to support each other. So you got to make those connections and support the connections you made. And, basically you pat my back, I'll pat yours kind of thing. But you got to be like honest and true about it, if that makes any sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. And my best piece of advice I was given was social media has got the word social at the front of it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I'd started, I was going, oh, look, I've written a book. Oh, look, I've written a book. Oh, look. And someone said, that's not social. That's just selling media. That's selling media.
That's just advertisement. Yeah.
So don't do that. Be social, be supportive, be engaging, be networking. And that was a great piece of advice. And it's exactly what you say, that if you are going to show support, you have to show it genuinely and not just because they might buy a copy of your book. Right.
You got to help each other out.
With regards to feedback then that you've had since the viral tweet and everything exploded, there's tons and tons of good feedback. I have seen lots and lots of, in fact, the vast majority, and when we should say this, the absolute vast majority of your feedback has been 4 and 5 stars.
Yeah, and that's
But-
so cool.
But you're now a proper author, and you've had some 1 stars. Like we've all
Yeah.
had that pain of shame, which is like having that
Yeah.
dagger put through your heart. How do you deal with that?
Yep. I try not to read them. You know, as an indie author, it's hard. You know, all these big name authors will say, you know, don't read the reviews, but as an indie author, you kind of almost need to, especially because you don't have 6, 7, or 8, or I don't even know how many people looking at your book as a traditional published author would. You don't have these.
You don't have full teams of editors, so you don't have maybe 12 fresh set of eyes. Yeah.
Right. You might only have 1 editor or something. So getting that kind of feedback, like I actually got quite a lot of feedback about how sometimes my clothing descriptions are too much and they take people out. So that's something I'm going to keep an eye on in book 2. But the 10 beta readers that I had and the 1 editor that I had didn't catch it, you know? So like, but a ton of other people did. So that's something I'm going to look out for book 2. And with the 1 stars, some of them hurt because some of them I felt like were a little mean. I'm not going to call them out because you're allowed to review books. But the ones that kind of hurt, I'll talk to my friends about it. And then they'll be like, why are you reading these? Don't do it to yourself, you know? And they're like, it's okay, you know, don't worry about it. But the other ones, it's like, you know, you feel that, and then you just got to move on. And then you read like the 4 or 5 star reviews. And what's really funny is I have a screenshot of a 5-star review right next to a 1-star review. And everything the 1-star review hated, the 5-star review absolutely loved. And I have that saved to remind myself that, you know, these readers' opinions are objective, and what someone hates, someone will love. So that's a really good way to remind yourself to not let some of the negative or less than positive ones kind of get to you. My favorite reviews are the ones that are a little more critical. Like some of my favorite reviews are actually 3-star reviews. They'll say, this is everything I liked, but this kind of felt a little lacking. And then they go into why. So I kind of use that almost as like feedback from like a beta reader or a developmental editor almost. And I'll kind of be like, okay, you know, maybe I can keep this in mind for some other books or something. You know, as an independent author, it's nice to read the reviews and get that feedback, but it's also
I think that's an exceptionally good approach, especially those really valuable reviews that have obviously been written by someone who has read your book and considered it and is not just giving, I don't like this, they're giving critical and constructive criticism. I know that when I got my first 1-star, I was mortally wounded. I didn't know what to do. And I went to an author friend of mine and he said, well, 1, it's a badge of honor because everybody gets 1-star reviews, so take it. And 2, he sent me a review which had been written by someone and it said, I don't like this story. I think there's too many characters in it. They're all a bit wishy-washy and it sort of lost me. And I especially don't like the lead character who I just can't relate to. 1 star. And I had to give it 1 star because you're not allowed to give it no stars. And I went, wow, that's a bit harsh. Who's that written about? Was that one of yours? And he said, no. And then he sent me the rest of the review screenshot, and it was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And I kind of thought, well, you know what? If Dickens is getting a 1 star, I'll take my 1 star and wear it there. So.
Oh yeah, I mean Stephen King's got a bunch of 1-star reviews. Like I know some of my author friends were talking about, you know, if you ever feel down about your writing, go to the 1 stars of your favorite authors.
Yeah, just gives you that bit of a boost.
Right. Everybody gets 1 stars. You know, if you don't get a 1 star, and it's funny because a lot of readers will actually side eye books that don't have 1-star reviews because they think that the author may have bought the reviews, or it's just their friends and family who are just like, yay, I love this book. Of course, it's my daughter or something. So
we should also point out that nowadays, if you haven't, on certain commercial sites, without naming anybody, if you haven't bought enough product or products on those sites, you won't actually be allowed to leave a review. It now bars them. So when trying to get reviews is the other thing that independent authors struggle for. It's the lifeblood of a book on certain commercial sites.
And it's that big website we all love to hate, right? They're cracking down on reviews too a little bit. I've noticed that you can't leave reviews until the book is out now, which is a problem on Goodreads. Because people will, like, if a book's not out and then, I don't know, the author says something, they'll hate review it without even reading it or something, or they'll 5-star review it without even reading it if they like the author, and that really upsets people. Like, I have this book that I was going to publish, so it's on Goodreads because I had a pre-order up for it and stuff, and then I scrapped it. Someone rated it 5 stars, even though it says unpublished. I'm like, you didn't read this because I don't have it out in the world. So it's like, why? But yeah, I know the big Zon is cracking down on reviews, so it's even harder to, especially for books.
It's another little hurdle that we all have to overcome, especially as Chelsea, listen, thanks ever so much for taking out a large chunk of your Sunday evening. That's very kind of you. We usually try to end with completely plagiarized, by the way, so I'm putting it out there. We've taken the Actors Studios questionnaire, and we've kind of taken Stephen Colbert's questionnaire, and we've kind of smashed them together, and we've come up with a range of questions. Quick fire, okay?
Okay.
So, Chelsea Banning, author of Crowns and Legends, book 1 of a trilogy about Arthurian fantasy. What is your favorite book?
Oh my gosh. I go through moods. Right. My favorite book at the moment is The Other Merlin by Robin Schneider. I also love the Akatar series by Sarah J. Maas and The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. Those are like my top books.
Very good. And if you have one, what would be your least favorite book?
I don't know. I don't think I have one.
So you wouldn't get past chapter 1 of a book that you didn't like?
Yeah, I DNF pretty quick. So if I don't like a book, I put it aside, and it's just not for me. I don't like hate read books or anything, so I don't.
Yeah, life's too short to suffer.
I don't know. Right.
Creativity wise, so in a whole life context, what turns you on?
I don't know. I guess just any good story, whether it be movie, TV show, book, any good story, I guess. That's very vague, but I don't know.
No, that works. And in the same context, what turns you off?
Bad dialogue.
Very good. Well, and is that in person when you meet someone at the bus stop? That bad dialogue, or?
No, I guess with I get inspired by like other books and TV and movies and stuff.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
And on a completely free day to do anything you want, who do you spend it with?
My husband.
Mountains or oceans?
Mountains.
Kind of had to be in Ohio, really, didn't it? You're a long shot from an ocean. What is your favorite movie? Or I'll give you TV series.
My favorite movie is where I got Banning from, and it is Hook, starring Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman.
Very good. And one song to listen to for the rest of your life?
I have no idea. I'm not a big music listener a lot, so I really couldn't narrow it down.
So we'll have to make that ambience album on your... Probably. Very good. Who makes you laugh the most?
Oh, it is so hard to pick between my Ren Fair friends. Couldn't. Oh my gosh.
So with regards to that fair, taking a step out from these quick fires for a minute.
Yeah.
When you go to the fairs, because I've seen you in the headshot that we're going to use for the promotion of the video, that looks like you're in a leather, not leather armor, obviously, but a leather battle dress.
Yeah. It's a leather riding coat.
And is that a particular character or a particular type of character that you play?
I was actually dressed as Ari in that. We my friend, one of my best friends, Bree, she owns a princess company, and that's how we met, because I used to own a princess company. We did birthday parties as princesses and superheroes. And the Girl Scouts of Northeast Ohio have this huge like slumber party in a mall, and it's called Girls Night In or something. And that year it was like a medieval themed. So I got hired, and I had my husband come out and a couple other Ren Fair friends, and one of the musicians that I know from Fair. He's known as Captain Stout. I had them come out. We did some fight scenes on stage, and we taught some medieval dancing, and Captain Stout did some shanties and stuff. And we all had characters, and I'm like, well, I'm working on this book. I'll just dress as this character. So I was actually dressed as Ari in that photo.
Fantastic. It looks really great. Okay, back to the quickfires.
Okay. Yeah.
What smell do you love?
Campfire.
What smell do you hate?
Sewage.
Other than being a writer, which is now your profession, what would you like to attempt?
So something I haven't done before?
Yeah, other than the professions you've done in life, what would you like to be?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I feel like I'm doing what I want. Maybe I tried being a teacher, so I didn't actually follow through with that.
And that'll put you on the spot. What would you like to teach?
Books.
Books.
Or history. I initially wanted to go for history, so.
Okay. And what profession would you definitely not like to do?
Oh, anything like factory or construction. Or retail.
Or retail.
Or retail. I'm done. I am so done with retail.
Is that because you have got no control over the person that's on the other side of the counter?
It's because I did it for like 15 years and I am done. I don't want to be screamed at anymore.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Your dogs are waiting for you.
Very nice.
I know.
Chelsea, listen, thanks ever so much for taking the time out to talk to us. Congratulations on what is a terrific example to all independent authors, that if you just keep going and, if you just keep doing what Dory said or didn't say, just keep writing and just keep going, everything works out exactly as it should.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun.
Oh, that's cool. No worries. Well, we'll talk later, hopefully, and we might even see each other at the Independent Author Book Festival.
That would be amazing.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Thank you.
If you're an independent author and you'd like to be a guest on our podcast and YouTube channels, simply email guest@bookreality.com or visit our website at bookreality.com and have a look at our podcast page.
Hi, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more readings and author interviews. And don't forget to hit that button to be notified every time we post new content.